Five Nights at Freddy's 4 might just be one of the most retconned games in the entire FNAF franchise. And I'm not just talking about scope, I'm talking about frequency. We've got a lot to talk about, so let's jump right into it. Slices, put on your aprons, and let's bake ourselves a theory. Now, what do I mean when I say the most retconned game in the series? Well, and I'll go more into detail on what I'm about to talk about later in the video, but I think that FNAF 4 was originally released with lore A, we'll say. And then the next game came out and it was changed to lore B. And then a book came out and it was changed to lore C. A game came out, changed to lore D, and I don't even know where we're at anymore. I know it's a big claim to make that one game's lore changed like 4 or 5 times, but I have my reasons and evidence for it. So first, let's gather our ingredients. So if I think the lore was changed at least 4 times, what do I think the lore started as? What did the original game set out to tell us? Well, we'll have to look at evidence we only get from that game and the games prior to see what it was trying to say. At the time, one of the more controversial theories that arose was dream theory. Essentially, it boiled down to the crying child having repeated nightmares of several different Fazbear animatronics during his coma that he entered due to the bite he received. This would have included every game prior, FNAF 1, 2, and 3. It explained a lot of things. It explained why FNAF 1, 2, and 3 were so interconnected, and why the FNAF 4 minigames seemed to reference each of those games. But even more than that from the gameplay itself, it explained why we see objects from a hospital in the background of the gameplay. It explained why we hear a FNAF 1 phone call during gameplay, and it even explained why Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and Freddy all move in similar or even identical ways to their FNAF 1 counterparts. But I said it was controversial. And controversial it was, but not because it was unlikely, it was because it was unsatisfying. No one really wanted it to be Dream Theory because that's kind of a lame way to end everything, especially in a franchise so devoted to keeping up a mystery. Any story can end with "it was all a dream" or "the main character was in a coma." It's easy and it can be used to explain any inconsistency, but it's not satisfying. And Scott picked up on this, at least I think he did, because in a live stream by Game Theory with a bunch of FNAF creators, which, wait a minute, today one of those things is going to happen. Today at 5 p.m. EST, there's going to be a live stream with Game Theory and a bunch of FNAF creators, myself included, which is insane to think about, talking about Game Theory's recent timeline. So please be there. It is going to be the biggest thing I've ever done, which is terrifying to think about, but I'm really good at bottling up my emotions and pretending it doesn't get to me. So if you want to see me pretending like I'm not starstruck and overwhelmed at the same time, I'll see you there. Anyway, Scott was in the chat of that old live stream, and he kept dropping hints, all of which leaned towards Dream Theory. Things like what FNAF brought up in his recent video. Why is Toy Chica missing her beak? Things seen in shadows are often misinterpreted in the mind of a child. All of this can help explain Dream Theory. But Scott was also in touch with the community, and the community hated Dream Theory, which makes the next game make a lot more sense in retrospect. Sister Location. Because in my opinion, the very next game in the series, Sister Location, completely retconned FNAF 4. It feels fairly well established that FNAF 4 and most of the games before it feel cohesive as a Dream Theory, but then Sister Location came along and changed the narrative. Now everything in those minigames needed an answer. The little Fredbears that accompany the crying child, that was his father William talking through a walkie-talkie. The gameplay nightmares we see in FNAF 4, at least some version of that actually happened, as seen by the camera feeds and power maps of that location. This would have been fine as a retcon except for 2 major issues. Why do we hear the FNAF 1 phone call during the FNAF 4 gameplay? If these were real things that actually happened, why would a future phone call be played through the hallway to scare the kid, I guess? It shouldn't have even happened by then, let alone have the crying child work at the FNAF 4 let alone the crying child get old enough to work at the FNAF 1 location. And 2, why would William Afton torment his youngest child like this? His oldest son already picks on him relentlessly. And then it hit us. If FNAF 4 is real, what if we aren't playing as the crying child? If the nightmares were actual experiments by William, with access to those experiments being locked behind the year his son dies, what if those experiments were done to his oldest son, the one who caused that death? Sort of a 2 birds with 1 stone kind of deal. He gets to do these experiments for whatever reason he does them, but he also gets some sick revenge on his oldest son for taking his youngest son from him. Man, this place goes on forever. And I am getting seriously thirsty. Those puddles are looking tempting. Oh, a sponsor. Maybe that'll help. Today's video is brought to you by Air Up. If any of you have seen me stream, you'll know that I drink a lot of water. It's honestly, I'm being honest, one of my favorite drinks unflavored. Mainly because I haven't found a flavored water that I like that has low sugar. I'm really sugar intolerant. Any regular soda gives me a headache immediately. But then I met Air Up. Perfect. This is insane to me, but these guys found a way to use science to flavor water without adding anything to it. No sugar, no calories, no nothing, because it uses scent to flavor the water. Here, look. This is where all the science happens. Let's take it from the top. First, you need some water. Then, simply pick a scent pod you want. My favorite's blueberry. Then, you take it and put it around the straw. Press it firmly in. Now this is really important. There are two ways to drink out of the bottle. If you push the scent pod all the way down, you just get normal water. It plugs the hole in the scent pod. Regular water, no flavor at all. But when you pull the scent pod up a little, the science takes place. I love blueberry. Drinking this way, you'll hear a bit of a bubbling sound as you drink. That's because the scent is going through the straw into your mouth, and once it's there, it separates from the water and goes to your brain, registering the water as flavored. You drink absolutely plain water, like you're just getting water, but it tastes really flavorful. I am being 100% genuine. This bottle has not only replaced my previous drinking bottle, we filter our water in our apartment because Philadelphia tap is sketchy at times, and we went from using one of these a day to like having to refill this thing like 3 times every day. I'm drinking so much more water now. So if you want to drink more water with great flavors and absolutely no calories, no sugar, or anything like that, go ahead and click the link in the description to get an Air Up bottle and a pack of scent pods today. You will not regret it, I promise you. Thanks again to Air Up for sponsoring today's video. Oh, this is kind of perfect. I am super thirsty, but I should make this water last. Who knows when we'll find fresh water next. Let's just focus on finding a map or an elevator or something. We gotta get out of here. So within the span of one game, we went from nightmares of the youngest son to the actual torture of the oldest son. Already that's a major retcon, but then it was tweaked once again when the Security Logbook came out. And on the page where Cassidy asks, "Do you still dream?" Mike draws a nightmare Fredbear. So the question is, was it a dream or not? Because 4 seems to argue that it was a dream, but Sister Location argues that it was real. And then the Security Logbook comes out and argues again that it was a dream. So for my own sanity, I theorized that at that time, it was intended to be both. After all, if these were real experiments by William Afton, why would the FNAF 1 phone call play in reverse? And why would it perfectly mirror the movement of animatronics within FNAF 1? The only explanation that I could settle on with that information was that Michael was tortured in one way or another by William Afton, similar to how we see it depicted within FNAF 4. But those experiences remained with him in the form of nightmares. So the FNAF 4 gameplay we see are the nightmares that Michael has after his experiences within the FNAF storyline. Fine, it's awkward, but it works. You know, it covers all the bases. So long as the series doesn't try to retcon again, we should be okay. Help Wanted was probably the biggest wrench ever thrown into the FNAF franchise, to be honest. The ultimate debate around the game centered around this line about an indie dev.
The majority of them were total fabrications from the mind of a complete lunatic. Lawsuits pending.
Oh boy. So does that mean every game we've ever played is complete fiction and this is just a total reboot of the series? Well, I've debated this topic before and I stand by with my previous conclusion. Although I think this does mean that FNAF 1 through 3 are in-universe actual playable games, and at least part of FNAF 4 is as well. But I do not think that the events that take place in those games are fake or untrue. After all, the game directly says that the things the indie dev made games about happened, and those games were made to make light and cover up what happened. All I think this is establishing is that games before Help Wanted have a somewhat unreliable narrative to them. It essentially gives them a pass to retcon things they deem necessary to continue the story. Now that being said, we only really have hard evidence for Five Nights at Freddy's 1, 2, and 3 to exist in universe. After all, in Help Wanted, their names are repeated verbatim and their gameplay is replicated nearly perfectly. Not only that, but the story Help Wanted from the books seems to double down on this idea. However, FNAF 4, as always, is more complicated, because we do have some FNAF 4 gameplay in Help Wanted and some of the characters, but the name and exact likeness are never replicated. Furthermore, in the story, he never finishes Five Nights at Freddy's 4, so the game was likely never fully released to the public. That being said, a lot of the Nightmare animatronics have been adopted into the Fazbear Entertainment canon. So when it comes down to it, is FNAF 4 real or not? For a while there, it was kind of up in the air, and maybe the Nightmare animatronics never existed to begin with, but were just creations by this rogue indie dev. We had really no way to tell, besides considering motivation. For FNAF 1, 2, and 3, making them up covers up crimes done by the company or by people associated with the company. It makes perfect sense to try to cover up and make light of the events that we see in FNAF 1, 2, and 3. But what of FNAF 4? The minigames seem to make light of some sort of accident, but the gameplay is just a child having nightmares. It doesn't really cover up anything, so we were kind of stumped. And then the Character Encyclopedia came out, and it said not once, not twice, nor 3 times, but seemingly 4 times, that the crying child is the protagonist of FNAF 4 as we play through his nightmares about his bad experience at Freddy Fazbear's. Oh boy. Seemingly we're back to the original intent of FNAF 4, even to the point of showing the crying child with a depiction of Nightmare standing right behind him, and holding a Fredbear plushie that doesn't seem to look like it has any sort of speaker or camera. God, I hope it's not actually a ghost talking to him. But is this the FNAF franchise trying to get back to its origins? It's hard to tell. After all, the Character Encyclopedia is sort of hit or miss. There are a few issues with it, some small inaccuracies. But surely if it's repeated that frequently throughout the book, it has to be canon, right? Like, sure, I can excuse 1 or 2 small mistakes, but repeated confirmation that the protagonist of FNAF 4 is the crying child having nightmares. It feels really cut and dry. But then the question is, why do we hear the FNAF 1 phone call, and why does Mike draw Nightmare Fredbear? Maybe it's a retcon. It's hard to tell. After all that's said and done, let's pop this mixture into the oven and see what kind of horror rises. I think it's most likely that FNAF 4 originally intended to wrap up the FNAF franchise in a dream theory, give us one overarching story of a child's nightmares after a traumatic event at Fredbear's family diner. But then Scott realized the community was not happy about that ending and tried to rework it into one storyline with sister location and subsequently Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, changing FNAF 4 into being the actual experiments that William did on Michael Afton. But he then wanted to have his cake and eat it too, and when the Security Logbook came out to give us a bit more details, it was mentioned that it was also nightmares from Michael and experiments by William. It's both. Then Help Wanted came out and said, hey, what if it was all fake? We were all confused for a while. And then the Character Encyclopedia came out and said, let's just go back to the beginning. It's just nightmares from the crying child. And that's where we're at now. Maybe we'll hear more about it in Security Beach Ruin, or maybe the movie will touch on it. But for now, that's all we can really say about FNAF 4. We don't know much else. Now, if you want to know what I meant about the questionable canonicity of games within FNAF Help Wanted, you better off go watching that video where I go more into detail about it. And before we go into the shout out phase, I actually have a surprise for everybody. It finally came. I have said my piece on a live stream, in a very long community and Twitter post. I've honestly used all the words I possibly can to say thank you. Oh hey, my letter is still signed by Susan. I wonder how much longer that'll be the case. But it feels real now. If I look at this too long, I'm gonna cry. Look at how reflective it is, my God. You can see OBS from here. I guess one more time, I'll just deeply and truly say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Being a content creator has been a dream of mine since elementary school. And to be able to do it for all of y'all and support myself and my family with it is nothing short of a dream come true. So I'm gonna work to keep earning that support you've all given me, but for now, I think we gotta go put something on the wall. Now, I hear you. why is it not symmetrical? Why didn't you just scoot it? Well, to bother you. If you want to make this symmetrical, you better give me the next plaque. Okay. In the meantime, a huge shout out to the best patrons, the Toasted Slices, Emberisk, Charlie Bean, Lovey Puppy, Stormachow, Just BKZ, Chickpea, Lolofembo, The Viper 26, Lehan, James Reiner, Emily De La Sierra, Snowblossom, Comrade Nika, Raven Eris, Glamrock Bonnie Isn't a Ghani, Bucky Ray, Mystic Angel, Achilles, Memento Mortem, Supermoosh, Honore Johnson, Jackson Davis, I, Untrusted Life, Kevin's Adventures, Blake, John Man, Natty C, King Coda, Dionysus, MD Switchy, Flip, Loose, Natsu Tanaka, Hyperdroid, and Mini Metals. And until next time, as always, stay toasty, slices.